Onura e te whānau. Era pū maharatanga era, ko tae mai wa tātou manuhiri, nā reira e te tokorua koutou, ko tae mai, kōrua ko tae mai, ki tēnei whare matihi, ko tēnei whare kōrero tātou, tēnā kōrua, nau mai, haere mai, e Scotty, e Stacey, tēnā kōrua.
Tēnā koe kaueti, whakatau nei māua ki tēnei hui matihiko nei, o tira e mihi atu ana kia koutou katoa. Koutou kua whakao i te karanga a Toi Tangata kia hui mai tata. Nō reire mihi ana kia koutou kia tātou i tā tātou kaupapa e whakakotahi nei a tātou. O tira ki tā tātou kai whakarite i te ata nei, rangi nui, e te rangatira mihi atu ana kia koe kawati i te kai whakahaere o tira koutou katoa, ngā kai hautu i te kaupapa nei, te hui nei, tēnā koutou katoa, ka rongo au i te wairua o tēnā o koutou, ka hoki ngā mahara ki a rātou ma. Rātou i takahi te ara, ki tihi ki te wahi ki te whakamataku. Rātou ki a rātou, anei, tātou ngā urupā o rātou ma, tātou e noho tahi nei tēnei wānei, tēnā tātou katoa i roto i tātou noho tahi i tēnei ata. Nō reira, kia ora tātou.
Koe mā harahara e hoa mā ka reo Māori, ka reo Pākehā hoki tēnei kōrero. We're not just going to speak to karere styles the whole time. I can already see the chat and saying, can you make them big? Well, no, you can't make me big, kare. I've tried my whole life. Engari, ko tēnei mea te reo Māori. Te reo Māori makes us bigger in our hearts and in our minds. And we want to talk to you about our whānau. Ngā tohu, kai roto I te reo, I tai mai kia māua. So when we look at Te Reo Māori, we talk about what it offers us as people, as a whānau, our journey of reclamation, the before and after, all of those things, but also just particularly when we talk about Toi Tangata, all of the aspects, the things that tell us that we're in the right place, the things that we can really engage in our opportunities that then lead to, I guess, a bigger world than we ever could have imagined. Nō reira, e mihi nui ana. Kia koutou katoa. E hono mai nei. Thank you for letting us into your spaces and your places, and ko te tūmanako ia, your hinengaro as well. The illustrators are very cute. I've never yet seen an illustrator really nail Scotty.
Can you make me look a bit more like Jason Momoa, please, Mr. Illustrator? He seems to be flavour of the month at the moment.
Kia kaha tātou katoa. Thank you so much for this time, because I guess if you look at some of the things that have happened in both of our lives, they would not exist if it wasn't for the way that we've chosen to live our lives and the destiny that we've felt lying in Te Reo Māori. I can say to you, ko tāku kia koutou I nei anei, I actually don't believe we'd be sitting here together at this point if it wasn't for Te Reo Māori. It's a unifying presence, and to me, it's a calling that I felt when I was devoid of Te Reo Māori, when I was too young to even know to want it. I still felt its loss and its absence in my life. So what I would say is that if you get an inkling of a feeling that you want to reclaim this into your life, there's a reason for that. And it could be as massive as the things that have come to us as a result. Katahi ka huri ki tēnei kōrero, and this probably is a good sort of inroad into this.
Yeah, we found that this statement from Judge Hemi Taumaunu in 2018 really resonated with us. And it was actually something that his father said to him. And he did articulate it in English at this district court judge's hui, that I think it's a triennial hui they have every 3 years. There's 150 district court judges present, and we did a bit of a presentation. We talked about how important it was just to get things like, pronouncing people's names properly, and, how much of a difference that would make in terms of the relationships that are present in the court.
We talked about Scotty's times that he stood in the court.
Yes, luckily we cleared that. Actually, I found out, I said before I mentioned some of my discrepancies of the past, whether or not those get wiped after a certain amount of time. They said, yes, usually after about 10 years, if you've been a good boy for 10 years, your record, if it's, minor offences, will get cleared. And I said, well, that's good. Then I can talk freely because it was 10 years later. But anyway, after we had done this this presentation, Hemi Taumaunu got up and did a bit of a summary, and he stated this, which is basically ka re tae te whenui raupatungia te whakahoki ki wā tātou tamariki.
We can't return to our children the land that was taken from us.
Ka re tae a ngā rawa I tā haingia te whakahoki ki wā tātou tamariki.
And we can't return to our children all of the resources that were taken from us.
Engari anō te reo, ai ka tae a tērā taonga nui o te katoa te whakahoki ki wā tātou tamariki.
But one thing, one precious taonga that we can return to our children is our reo.
And so that really resonated because it is something that we can be proactive about, and something that we can, if we have enough determination, enough drive, enough inspiring people around us, and enough motivation, and we can plan it out properly, it is something that we can change in our whānau. And so a lot of linguists like Fishman will tell you that it'll take 3 generations, takes 1 generation to lose a language, 3 generations to bring it back. I see the reasoning behind that, but I think it's probably more 1 or 2 generations you can return that language back, because in our particular whānau, our situation, when I just embarked on learning Te Reo, which happened by accident, and it was all to do with getting a 3-day weekend at Waikato University, how I ended up being in Te Reo. And that's a long story. I won't share that. Well, should I share that? No, should I? I'll try and condense it down.
You never do. He's going to tell you about his cousins, which
yes,
are relevant.
Well, but they were there. They gave me the advice that you should put all your papers between Monday and Thursday, and you get a 3-day weekend. So I did that, and I was going through the prospectus of the university to sort out my first semester timetable, had all my core papers, doing my optional papers, and next thing you know, I got 1 gap left in my timetable to get the 3-day weekend, the treasured 3-day weekend. And the paper that fitted in was Te Kākano, Introduction to Māori Language. I thought, fantastic, I'll put that in. And that was pretty much the journey into Te Reo, because at that stage they were just piloting the first intake of native speakers, fluent speakers, to be sent out into our kura kaupapa, because kura kaupapa was just starting to give momentum.
He's going off track already.
No, it's just starting. So, this will tell you how old I am. But anyway, so kura kaupapa just starting. So they needed to put teachers in there. So they trained all these fluent speakers. And because I'd taken a Māori language paper, I was in the bilingual teaching stream, and we did all of our stuff with the immersion group. And I thought, wow, how fantastic that these people can speak this language so fluently and beautifully. And then we would go to a party, and they'd sing all these wonderful songs in Māori, and I thought, wow, this is brilliant. It was inspiring. It was inspiring. Yeah, that was one of their favorites. And it was inspiring, and I got really inspired by it, and that really started to reconnect me with our culture and with the language, obviously, but with everything else that comes with it. And so that was pretty much a saving grace for me, because as I mentioned before, I was going off the rails a bit. So the language put me back on the right track, and it put me amongst people who became father figures like Wharehuia and Timoti Kāretu mainly, and then later on Supau Te Mara. So that's how I sort of got into it. And that's, and because now that we've had children, I think, and our children are first language speakers, so I understand the reasoning behind the 3 generations, but I think we can make the changes quicker, and all it takes is one person in your whānau to take the step and start to learn the reo, and then pass it on, and you've regenerated the reo in your whānau.
Every time Te Reo Māori is part of your life and resonates in your home, you are reclaiming Te Reo Māori. You are a reo champion. This is an act of mana motuhake we can do every single day. So don't think you have to be on Te Karere. Don't think you have to be a fluent speaker. Don't think you have to be in Parekiretanga. You know what you're doing. Every time you speak our language, you give it strength and you give it energy, and it's alive. So what does the language being alive look like. It actually looks like crack up things. It looks like
having fun.
Yeah, it looks like, you know, a wānanga in our car. I wonder what inspired this with our tamariki. About how would you say, you know, te ahonei pātero mai tētahi, someone did a pātero. And so the wānanga begins.
In the back seat of the car. And I think it was our son, when they were arguing over who did the pātero, he said, whoever smelt it dealt it. And of course, that was in Te Reo Pākehā. And we were like, oh, tai hoa, we need to put that into Te Reo. How are we going to say that
Well,
into
we
Te
said
Reo?
that in Māori. He aha tēnā ki Te Reo Māori.
Yep. And so next minute, we're on the journey. And what, 30, 40 minutes, we're having a big wānanga about how you would say, whoever smelt it dealt it in Te Reo Māori. And in the end, I can't remember who came up with this one. I think it might have been one of the daughters, but I thought actually that's probably a pretty cool way of translating whoever smelt it dealt it. So it was ko ia hi, nāni ha. Ko ia hi, the smelling of it, nāni ha, and that ha that came out, which wasn't a sweet ha, but it was a more putrid ha. But anyway, so that's sort of how we translated that. So we always having fun with te reo. We're always using a lot of kiwaha. And, you know, it's a big gig. We found it really challenging. We had to navigate our way through it because we just thought when our son was born 16 years ago, we thought, okay, kōrero Māori anake, simple as that. And it wasn't as simple as that for us anyway. And so we didn't have a plan, but we would recommend you have a plan now. And yeah, we just sort of found our way through it, really, didn't we?
Yeah, and I guess to speak to that, you could go, well, if it was hard for you guys, then it's hard for everybody, and it is. But we're being realistic about that because I don't want you to think if you're struggling that you're alone. It is hard. It's hard, and it's worth it. So what it would look like at that point was that Scotty was a fluent speaker, but he didn't know how to talk about, you know, tamariki. He didn't know how to talk about babies and, you know, the playground. He reo anō, that's another language. I was probably an intermediate speaker. It hurt my brain to stay in the reo all the time, and my children did not sleep. And yet this was the vision, to return to our children what was taken from us. And then you've got to look at the little wins when they come, and they come in these forms. When your child says to you something like this, when we drop her off at Puna, "Taitai ake te rangi, hohunu ake te moana, whānui ake te ao tukupu, taku aroha ki a koe."
Yes, and this is when your heart just goes, oh, it was all worth it, all of that effort, talking Māori to these children, because she was getting dropped off at Punureo, so probably 4 or 5 years old, and just came out with this just out of the blue. And it translates to, my love for you, taku aroha ki a koe. Teitei ake te rangi is higher than the sky. Hohunu ake te bona is deeper than the ocean. Whānui ake te ao tukupu is wider than the universe. And we're sort of going, wow, that made it all worth it, didn't it?
Yeah, so don't tell me I'm waiting 3 generations. This feels pretty good now. So take those wins.
But I think it's also a good example of the holistic nature of te reo and how te reo opens up so much more connection in terms of who we are holistically than what English language does. And this is part of we're talking health and well-being, and I know a lot of speakers might have alluded to this and articulated this yesterday, but the language is the connector for who we are, and it's the connector in terms of our holistic well-being and health. And we need all of the things that we connect to in a traditional sense. We need to reconnect to all those again to complete our health and well-being aspirations. So I think the language is a really key area for us in terms of healing ourselves, because we need the energy from the taiao. We need that respect for the taiao. We need the connections and the relationships with the taiao, but we also need to reconnect with our spirituality, and that's all part of it. But we had a language, a particular language that we used to make sure that in a spiritual sense we were healthy, in a spiritual sense we were well, and that language was te reo karakia, te reo o karakia. And even if it was just simple things like taku taku, which are like a particular form of karakia that is not prepared, it's not learnt, and it's quite personal, and it's you speaking to your deity, speaking to the environment, speaking to spiritual essences, spiritual feelings that you have, and connecting with those and making sure you make those connections. And so that reo taku especially, I think, is something that we don't have anymore, and we lost it because of the loss of the language. We aren't able to use our language to connect with what we used to connect to. And I think that's a really huge void in terms of our health and well-being, is that spirituality, is that being able just to deliver taku when we feel we need to deliver it, to make sure that in a spiritual sense we're healthy, in a spiritual sense we have the well-being there as well, to complete that holistic health and well-being model that was so well demonstrated by Sir Mason Jury in the Whare Tapawha.
Because that's our heart language. When we can speak our hearts. And with tamariki, I remember our son, he was about 12 or 13, waking in the morning, he goes, "Kare taku wairu e te tino tau, anō nei kua pāngia hau e te tahi mea." So he said, I'm just like, it's like my spirit's feeling a bit weird. I feel off. It's like something's impacting me. And I don't care if other people's language would be, "Oh, he's a bit down, he's a bit depressed." The way he chose to say it to me said to me that Te Reo Māori gives him a means to express his spiritual self, his emotional needs, that I'm really grateful for as a mother. The things that we can speak to our children about, they're just very normal. I was telling him the other day how I had a rehu, he visited me, Aotearoa before he was born. And it's like, you're talking to a 16-year-old, and he didn't even give me the side eye. He's just like, "Oh yeah, mōhioi, mama." Like, I know that I came to you and told you, even though you're being an idiot right now, everything will be okay. So those kind of things, these are tools that we give our tamariki, but I don't want you to feel any guilt, any fault that you don't have this at the moment. I just want you to believe that every little part you're offering your tamariki does make the difference.
Yeah, it's a journey. I mean, we're on this journey, and it's all about reclamation. A lot of the things that, things that we do at TVNZ, things we do in our workplaces, things we're doing in the community. I always say that, people say, "Oh, what is this? A 5-year plan, a 10-year plan?" I say it's a 3-generation plan. And, we might not see the equity that we want. We might not see the tino rangatiratanga that we pursue, the mana motu hake that we desire in our lifetimes. But we start the journey. We're planting that seed so that our mokopuna will get the equity, the rangatiratanga and the mana motu hake in 3 generations' time. So it's about looking that far forward. And so, and I go into the prisons a lot with my cousin Billy McFarlane, who just rang me. Probably saying, "When are you coming for your next visit?" And I think it's part of the, I talk to our people in there about, what do you do for your spiritual well-being and health? And they've got nothing. And I mean, granted, most of them have been born into a situation where this was always going to happen. They didn't have a chance, but it's trying to return something back to them that gives them some kind of avenue to express themselves better, whether it be haka. I say, next time you get angry, think about tū mātaunga, think about how we do haka, think about how we control ourselves in haka. We have that aggressiveness, we have the energy and the power and everything, but we control it in haka. Any talented performer, any experienced performer on the matatini stage will say, you have to control the ihi. The ihi can't control you. And it's those kind of messages that we can deliver through our deities, through our spirituality, through tū mātaunga, through haka and all that kind of stuff. We try and convey those messages to them to say, this is how you control your anger. You use our culture to control it. So you're not lashing out, so you don't end up in here. And so, and then it's all the, you can contribute, your whānau needs you, all of those kind of things. So to me, that spirituality is a really important part of health and well-being. I've been into hospitals before, at the request of people, and I have conversations with a lot of the health staff in there, and they say they're always looking at the physical problem. They always look at the physical problem. Oh, they've got this, they've got that, they've got this, they've got that. I said, okay, so what's the healing process? Oh, well, we're going to do this. And I said, you need to heal the wairua first. You need to look at what spiritually, how you can strengthen that and heal that and make that healthy, because that's going to give them a better chance to heal themselves physically. And they don't even think, it's like, well, they look at me strange and say, no, we can do particular ceremonial stuff and spiritual things through karakia to make sure that in a spiritual sense they're healthy, which is going to give them a much better chance to recover from whatever they got in the physical sense. So again, it's that holistic thing, and our language, I think, has all of the remedies and all of the healing qualities that we need in it. The other thing was when our boy got injured at rugby, and to me that just showed how the language is built for us to express ourselves emotionally. We talk a lot about mental health now, and we talk about, how do we express ourselves? How do we talk about how we're feeling? How do we talk about depression and all that kind of stuff? I think the language is built for that. It's an emotional language. It's set up like that. You look at our moteate and all that kind of stuff, emotion, the poetism, the metaphor, but the emotion that they are able to talk about and the directness with how they speak about things is all part of the mechanics of the language. And so when our boy got injured and, the St. John's officer is talking to him in English and he's sort of like, shutting down a little bit. And then his mother turns up and starts speaking in Māori, and then tears start flowing and he starts to say, this is what's wrong. This is what's wrong.
And can I just add that after speaking to him in English for, a couple of minutes, when she heard him speaking Māori to me, she started going, are you okay? Is he okay? I go, yes, he can still speak English like he could a couple of minutes ago.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no. But it is just an opportunity, and we have had some good experiences, I'll say as well, in healthcare places. And just to give you the context of that, Scotty's been trained under Te Matapununga, Tā Pau Te Mara, for example. So those are the reasons why he is asked sometimes to do that. And I just also want to add that not everything needs to be verified by Western science. We can just know it, we can just feel it, and we can just believe it. And that is the rongoa, that is the reason, and that is our verification.
Mm-hmm. These are just other, this is a bit more about having fun with the language. This was trending a little bit, so that's the thing is, having fun with it. There's, being entertaining, looking for new things, keep the language new, keep it evolving, keep it recent, keep it trendy. This was trending on, was it YouTube or TikTok or something, or back in the day, which
he doesn't use social media,
which is the floor. The floor is lava. I had to be told about it because I didn't know anything about it. But they said, "Oh, what's this? The floor is lava, and you got to jump up and get off the floor." And the last one to get off the floor gets burnt by the lava. And we go, okay, we need to put that in the reo. So we came up with that tahe pui a te papa, and we played that for a couple of years all over the place, in shopping malls and Disneyland and all over the place. It was very funny. We had a lot of fun with that one. And these are just sort of, again, with the language, there's a lot of values, a lot of principles that we live by, that it's all built into the language. So this one was one.
This becomes a framework for behavior that we made for our whānau, and you're welcome to use if you want to. We say to the kids, like if they're going on stay at someone's house or going on a play date, hahanga wha e toru. What are the three wha? Whakarongo, as in listen to the parents there. Whakawhetai, use your manners, say please and thank you. By the way, someone said to me, well, wouldn't mihi be better? Whakawhetai, isn't that only church? I'm like, no, it's not only church, but also it doesn't start with wha if it's mihi. So that was really what we're doing here, the alliteration. And whanonga, behavior, as in make sure that your behavior is good as well. So right into this day, we'll go ngā wha e toru whakarongo, we'll go hanga wha e toru, and they go whakarongo, whakawhetai, whanonga. Still not saying that they're like, wow, mum and dad, we love this. It's like, this is part of our whānau culture. And then Scotty added one more as well.
Yes, I added one more because our son got into the first team last year, and he was, sort of all of a sudden.
Self in the first 15. What do you need? You need whakaiti.
Whakaiti was the one I added in. So now whenever he goes to parties or whatever, stuff, I say whakarongo, whakawhetai, whanonga, whakaiti.
As in, that means to stay humble, not to put other people down. I know whakaiti has various meanings, but whakaiti in this way, ngākau whakaiti is someone who is willing to make themselves smaller, as in be humble. So just remember that, don't think you're cool and go on about your first 15, 40 years later. So really simple way. So this is 3 words, me ko piwai waka. You're just like the piwai waka. So this is actually tied into a, ancient narrative around Maui and Hine Nui Te Pō. We all know that, you may know that the piwai waka or the tiwai waka actually called out, and that is why Hine Nui Te Pō woke up and slammed Maui. So that act of the piwai waka calling out is how he was discovered and met his ultimate demise. This is a kōrero that then you can use just with those 3 words, me ko piwai waka, and the kids would do that in the back. Someone gets told on, they go, me ko piwai waka, like, what a nut, you're a nut for telling on me. But also, I guess within those narratives, Scotty also uses this when he talks to men, especially in prison, going, what is this story about? It's about consent. It's about the mana of women. Wrapped in this narrative says, this is not okay to not have consent, that the mana of women is to be respected, and if not, there will be consequence, and the mana of the wahine is paramount. So within the narratives, the things that we may have been told were myths and legends, there's ancestral brilliance that was always interwoven. And sometimes it can feel quite painful to realize that we were sold the wrong narrative on it, that it's just a story. But I think it's joyous when we can recover it and we can reclaim it.
Yeah, these are the kind of learning tools that we take into the prison. So a lot of the time I'll just go in there and talk about one of our traditional narratives. And so it might be the story of Maui and Hine Nui Te Pō, and I'll tell them the story. Some of them know it, some of them have heard it, some of them have got no idea. But the key to all of these traditional narratives is knowing how to peel back the layers of it and find out what's the messaging hidden in beneath. In it, how ngā kura huna kai roto I te kōrero e takoto ana. So what are the messages and the knowledge that our ancestors have planted in these traditional narratives for us to find and for us to learn from? And so you should see their faces, because they go through a lot of different programs in prison to try and rehabilitate them, and a lot of them don't respond to it because it's led by Pākehā people with Pākehā philosophy and Pākehā frameworks, and it just doesn't suit them. It doesn't fit who they are. And then we go in there and we talk about this, and then you come down and you say, what do you think it means? Pull it back, blah, 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 blah. And you say the messaging in this, look what happened to Maui. Maui did not ask for permission. Yeah? And so the messaging in that for you fellas is that you don't lay your hand on a woman unless they give you that consent, unless they give you that permission. Otherwise, you treat them with respect. Otherwise, there's consequences. Yeah? And when you tell them that, just the look on their faces, all of a sudden they get it. Just it's in their DNA. Was it innately, and innately they get it. Yeah? And so it really changes them. It's just the look on their faces. It's just like, wow, it's just like they've been hit with a sledgehammer, and they go far out. After all this time, when you contextualize it into a traditional Māori narrative and a Māori framework and give it to them and then tell them what the messaging is, they just get blown away by it. So hopefully that kind of stuff is working for our people in there. They can come out different people with different sets of values and knowledge based on our traditional knowledge. Because as I mentioned before, everything we need to know is all sitting in there. It's all the kura huna in there. We just need to peel back the layers and interpret them and find out where they are.
I saw that Lewin translated that for everyone. Kura huna being hidden gems.
Oh yeah, nice.
X Factor.
Nice.
What are you doing here, Lewin? What are you up to?
He's everywhere too. He's like Ranginui. They're everywhere, these fellas. Yeah, it was interesting because I was listening before about what Kathy Jew said, and yes, those people, I mean, remember back to 72 and the march and all of those people, well, most of those people, I won't say all of them, a lot of those people weren't speakers themselves. But they were champions, ne? And they championed the reo, and they realized the value of the reo. And again, they were doing that for their mokopuna. And their main drive was to get te reo in the schools. And I think what's happened is that they were the initial champions and drivers of language revitalisation were people in urban centres who didn't have te reo themselves, but wanted it as the birthright for their children and their mokopuna. Then we've had a little bit of a change where the revitalisation process has been led by second language learners. And now we're into this bit where you've got people like Kawati, you've got people like Ranginui, you've got people like Luan, who have been brought up with te reo, who are now taking over the revitalisation of the language, the normalisation of the language, and leading it into the future for us. So it's interesting. It's sort of like my little snapshot of what's happened over the years. So yeah, we're into that part now where our raukura from Kura Kaupatāreo, all of these people who are now they have te reo. It's part of who they are, and they are utilising it for the betterment of all of us and all of the institutions that they're infiltrating now. So that's awesome.
So one subtlety of that is how we treat each other as Māori, and having aroha for each other's experiences. Generationally, we've all had different experiences when it comes to the reo and to our culture. It might be where we were brought up. It might be who our parents are. We have Pākehā mothers, and that they were actually able to support us in our Māoritanga more than our Māori fathers.
Better than our Māori fathers.
Because of lots of things, the societal pressure that has been put on them. So, the way we treat each other, and what I've seen Dr. Hinemoa Elder call lateral violence sometimes, is something that I think we can talk about with each other. I don't really want others looking in and judging us being mean to each other, but we can say in a safe space, that is what we do to each other. I mean, I know I've been called everything from plastic when I couldn't speak Māori, to, elite, being in the Panekiretanga, to being, still. So they go, oh yeah, but they're second language learners. It's like, no shit. That's my whole shtick, is to go, I had no reo and I learned. That's my story. Awkwardly, it was very public in my particular case because, I was on TV learning and stuffing things up. But what I've realized from that, even though it was embarrassing for me, is that other people related and they could recognize that I was getting a bit better than I used to be. That's my experience because of my age, where I grew up, my whānau. And so therefore, if I am nasty to another Māori woman, and it's actually coming from a place of envy and language trauma that is totally valid, I do think it's more hurtful than when non-Māori judge us. Nō reira ko tāku kia tātou, we do, I think there's a real opportunity to have compassion for each other and have compassion for our experiences, that we are all doing our best. We're not all starting from the same place. Nō reira kia kaha tātou. And the way that we can look after each other is by creating community. So this is what we did. Māori for Kids was first because I realized I had no mates who were on the same buzz as me. So I had to make a group to get people to, so that I could actually have people who were at home with their kids. I'm trying to speak Māori as much as possible. Mātamu, our eldest, didn't go to puna until he was 3. And so I was at home, so we'd create these, we created basically a play group. And then that grew into Māori for grown-ups, because as we say, generationally, there's these parents that are wanting the best for their kids. They're sending their kids to puna and to kohanga, and yet they're not at a place where they can be as fluent as their children. So to match that together, that's really what we started Māori for grown-ups for. So we have here, you can see wānanga, here you can see the online community, ways of sharing and ways of actually meeting those gaps without shaming, but making it fun. You can see here if it's a competition. Holy heka, Māori people are psychopathic when it comes to competition, and it actually lets the whakamā fall away a lot of the time. So that's a good strategy that we realised worked. So this is the Rōpū Tākaro, the play group for Pipi and Matua, and we had all different types of reo levels. Some people, found it really hard to come into this environment, and that's one of the things that informs me around whakamā. I was trying to be as welcoming as possible. I don't know if I did it right all the time, but I do know that in making these reo rawimi, these resources, I was actually sneakily learning as I went. So it's that whole thing as parents, you don't have to be perfect before you start using it with the kids. So here are some people here who are now still some of our best mates. People who are on the same buzz, on the same waka, they are invaluable, because then it makes it feel like you actually are building momentum and you have people who have the same intention as you. We also started the events. As I say, this is all relevant to where our kids were. Our kids were little, so going to the zoo was easy. Now they walk past the zoo, but those kind of, you have to act to what the community needs right now. What did we want? We wanted to be around other whānau kōrero Māori. We weren't in a kura kaupapa environment. We had that hard decision of what school our kids would go to, and then we wanted to help invest in the reo of our community of parents as well. So this is one of the ways that we did it. But now, things are a little bit different. So like, say, one of the actions that we took is one of our kids goes to a school that isn't total immersion Māori. And so we go, okay, well, it's 2 kura reo a year at least. And so that's kind of how we navigate things like that, to be militant parents. Māori at home. This is not empire building by the Morrisons. This is just seeing how hard it is, and therefore wanting to offer a resource.
Because all of those years when we were struggling along a little bit without a plan, we collected a whole lot of resources. We'd put a whole lot of resources together. We created a whole lot of resources to run wānanga through Māori for Grown-ups, etc., etc. And I think I'd done 2 books before this one, but then this idea came up because we were thinking, well, when we had our first child and I started to go down to the playground with him, and I thought to myself, what's the word for the swing? And what's the word for the roundabout? And that spider net thing they climb up, what's the word for that? So, I had to go and try and find all of this new vocabulary so that I could stay in the reo in the context of the playground. And it's a context that I wouldn't usually have gone to, obviously. I mean, you don't go to the playground when you're a 38-year-old male. But unless you've got a kid with you. So you go to the playground, and then you realize, actually, I'm not equipped to speak Māori here. I haven't got all of the words I need and the vocab I need to make sure that I can stay in the reo here. So you go on this journey of research, and you collect all the words and you learn the words, and then you use them in the context. So we decided, let's save everybody else the hassle, the hassle and the pain of having to go and look for all these words. Let's just chuck them all into a book so that people can go straight to, it's all contextualized, and if they're going to the playground, they can go straight to the chapter about the playground, and there you've got all the language that we had to go around and find. It's all sitting there, and there's some phrases that you can use when they're playing on the different equipment in the playground. So that's why we basically put that book together.
Like, for instance, Tiemi, the seesaw, that's an example of one that I actually found quite hard to remember at the time. So I made a little jingle because I work in radio, and so that's how I roll. But also, you've got to figure out what works for you. How do you remember things? People will often say, I need to see it written down, or I know I need to hear it. So what sort of learner are you? For me, putting things in a story, making an association or making a song was one way that I could do it. So are
you going to do the TME song?
Yeah, okay, everyone wants. That's my jam.
I'll do the sign
That's
language.
My jam. It goes TME, TME, rungararo, rungararo, rungararo. Pretty simple lyric. It's TME, seesaw, rungararo, 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 up and down, up and down, up and down. But then it got to the point where we'd sing it when the kids got on the seesaw, the tiememi, and then they'd get on, they'd do it. They'd be about this age and be singing along themselves. And that's when you know it really does get in and it's working. And I guess another, just to give you an insight into my brain and my way of remembering things, I wanted to remember niao. Niao means edge, as in don't sit on the edge. Kawe noho ki te niao te turu kai taka koe, in case you fall. So niao, niao, that's a weird word. How do I remember that one? And then I just pictured a racing car going on the edge of the track, going around the edge, going meow, 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 and that was niao, and that was how I remembered it. So that's me. That's how my brain works. So you've got to figure it out how your brain works and what will help you. So that's what Māori at Home was. And then I guess the biggest joy, more than sales, or I mean, it's good that people buy the books, but it's been clinically proven if you don't open the book and read the book, it can do nothing for you. The most important thing is to see that people are bringing it into their lives. And that's what's happening here. This is a little action chart for the morning. So the child with the words that from Māori at Home, they go, okay, this is my little plan to get ready in the morning. Kai parakuihi, if I've done it, kua otsi. That's been accomplished and they can put it up. What an organised parent this one is. Whakapai moinga, they probably only got one kid, and put it up there if they manage to do whakapai moinga. We should bring this in for teenagers, actually. So creating those resources, that was a real show that it actually worked. And just quickly, this is on SoundCloud, which is pretty old school, but we'll put it on to our new formats. Our awesome group included people like Irina and Ruia Aperehama and Andrea Chunks, Anahira Higgins, great singers. So they made an album that you can still use, obviously some classics, Upoko Pakahiwi, but also some new songs about going to school.
The thing with Upoko Pakahiwi, Upoko Pakahiwi, Puko Hope Wai. And so in order to give the kids in the Māori for grown-ups group, or Māori for Kids group, more language around their body, we started to create more verses. So after they sang Upoko Pakahiwi, Puko Hope Wai, we had Pai Manu Rara Heke Rirapa. Pai Manu Rara Heke Rirapa, Pai Manu Rara Heke Rirapa, Pai Manu Rara Heke Rirapa, Popoke Ate Rapa. Yeah, so and that was all, like collarbones,
ribs, and thighs, hamstring,
calf muscles, ankle,
knee,
popoke ate, calf, rapa, ankles. So giving them more language around the body so that they could, because they always injure themselves. Actually, as adults, we always injure ourselves too. And you want to get a bit further down the track, then ko wharataku ringa, saying, being a bit more specific about which part and what the particular injury is. So we used song to give them that language. This is a good way of doing it. And as people have mentioned, more te and stuff like that.
Well, as I just saw Tom say as well, like how he'd remember niao is to whack his knee, niao, like so whatever works for you. Pai tēnā.
This was an awesome resource,
yes.
This one. Mihi ana ki a koutou, toi tangata I te putanga mai o tēnei rau e mi, because we really use this one a lot, and we still do. Yeah? It's got some awesome language in this one.
Oh, sorry.
And, especially around Kai, health, well-being, all of that kind of stuff. That was a really awesome resource. So just wanted to put that in there so that, that we really used this one.
And also just to like warawai ha for carbohydrates. Oh, and actually ka pāmai te pauritanga, because I think of Mason ngā whika, ka aroha koe te hoa, because he was there at the time, and to have those words for carbohydrate.
Honey was another one.
Yeah,
that came out of the book.
So yeah, these that kind of to be able to use it. I remember at the time, Dr. Lily Fraser and Otako Marae would have warawai ha iti, low carb, flash, beautiful kai. So just bringing Te Reo into yes, it's new language, but the thing is that it's relevant language. So if it's relevant, it's in your life, you're going to use it. You're going to know random words that perhaps if it's relevant and you're using it every day, you're going to know it. Friend of mine, for some reason, she doesn't speak Māori that much, but manani rau, circus is her word, because she would always take her child there. So those words that, he te tonu, te kōrero tia, like if you're always saying it, then learn it in Māori. And we just want to say big mihi to this book and kia maisen hoki. Tēnei te hoki ngā mahara ki a koe. This is about, we just want to, actually, if we go back a little bit, sorry, because I just saw a question. This is probably the most relevant time to talk about it. Hayley, tēnā koe. Are there any templates or places to go to start building out a plan or strategy for reo revitalisation in our kāinga? So we have been involved in kura whakaraura, which are language planning wānanga. And some really amazing things have come out of that. Other people, like say some came to our hui and they went, right, so what I figured out I need to do is start a school. And they did that to Hawaii and Blenheim. It doesn't need to be that full on, but we've got Reo to Go and Wellington. Sometimes it's just a start that people need. I do have some that I'm happy to send you, especially because, we know each other, kei te pai hoki tērā, but it's got to be what works for you. So the wānanga is actually the process, looking at what resource you have amongst yourselves, how you roll, what's important in your life, how is this going to fit in? Because I really want to, as much as I totally am so in awe and grateful for the people that are going to Takiura just around the corner, I want us to be careful about thinking that everyone has to take a year off to study the reo and immersion, and that's the only way to do it, because that is just not an option for everybody. You are Kylie.
Yeah, kia ora, brother.
But this opportunity to learn the reo, we have to make it fit into our lives, because otherwise we get into this place of postponing when we're going to speak the reo. When I'm fluent, I'll do this. When I can take a year off, I'll do that. When I can get into a class, I'll do that. Actually, you'll probably find you have quite a lot of capacity. It's just getting your head into the space of using the reo that you do actually know. So how you're going to change that dynamic is the biggest part of your plan. How are you going to listen to waiata? Are you going to have karakia through the day? Are you going to have little stops during your day that makes the reo naturally occur in a way that's easier? Okay, now, Pani, you've got an awesome question. It's too hard for me. I'm sending it over to Scotty.
No, I need a wānanga on that one. I need a bit more information on what lateral violence actually
How
is.
te kupu Māori mo lateral violence. Sorry, yeah, this is me, nerdy wife. Lateral violence is when Māori are mean to Māori.
That's a what?
Māori are mean to Māori. Yeah, it's like, because we're lateral, we're on the same level. It's not like the man being mean to us, we're being mean to each other. Not that we ever you know what I mean, lateral violence. So
there's a few things popping up in my head, but
like within the hapori, so Māori ki te Māori, kaua ko te tauiwi ki te Māori, ne? Me kaua tātou e patu i a tātou.
Whakaheke tupu was like...
He's off in wānanga mode. And at that point, we lost him, anaho.
Well, whakaheke tupu is it's a term they use for actually when you sort of belittle yourself, but it's like you someone close to you and you denigrating their whakapapa and who they are. So it could be something along those lines. It's a big wānanga. They have to sit down with a few people and off we'd go on that one.
And that's the humbling nature of the reo, that you don't know everything. No one can know everything. And that's awesome.
I would say whakaheke tupu at this stage, but I wouldn't, that would be just something I'd throw in as a suggestion for it.
But we sort of talk about the wider spaces of the reo and the advocacy mahi that we do. So within, say broadcasting, that kind of thing, I say for Weta workshop, who I think they're Weta now.
Finally,
I actually emailed them when I had an opportunity, like the spaces that we work in, and I said, that Weta without the macrons actually means shit, so you're a shit workshop, and they were like, oh yeah, but it's just we can't change our logo. I'm like, oh wow. So you can make like King Kong break down whole cities and make really long Lord of the Rings wars, but you can't put two little lines over the air and the R. So you want to stay a ship workshop. And they have actually, they must hate me because I tell heaps of people this, but now they've changed it. Nō reira kua huri te ao. So those are the kind of I guess, opportunities that we can take and our ways of being champions for the reo. And you don't have to be the expert to actually to get into this mahi. But I mean, some steps that I guess organizations are starting to take, and, you know, we're seeing a lot more, you know, consultancies and all those kind of things, because our expectations have changed very quickly. And that's hard for a lot of people to keep up with. So what do you need to do? You need to engage with the experts to make sure that there's some quality, and also know that te community, that it's okay to make mistakes. It's the way that you lean into that, and the way that, you know, the wairua of how you are engaging with it, that's most important. So yes, as we see this resurgence for the reo, I guess every year, you know, we take it in. We kind of look at where things are and where things are changing and what's needed right now. And what I actually feel strongly about at the moment is that Māori don't get left behind in this revitalisation, that we don't accidentally get colonised again. So it's really important to me that we invest in each other. Because he pai when whakaihu waka, you know, Reo Māori champions are fantastic, and we all are achieving different things. But most importantly here, you don't have to be a reo expert to be a reo champion.
Yeah, I mean, a very important part of language revitalisation is people who champion the reo, even if they're not fluent, even if they're not Māori. We still need those champions to help in the revitalisation process. But he tika ta Stacey, you know, we have to be careful that we don't get left behind in the whole revitalisation process, and we end up having, you know, teaching a whole lot of people who aren't Māori the reo, and next minute they're all speaking the reo and we're not.
So that's where strategy comes in.
Yeah, it is strategy, and it also, you know, I think one of the challenges that most people speak to now in terms of whether or not they're in a position to learn te reo is basically the time and their living situations. I mean, people are just worried about paying the power bill and getting the next plate of food on the table, and they just haven't got it in their mind space or headspace to be able to go and learn the reo. And that's a major problem for us as Māori, because as we know, a lot of our people are in low socioeconomic areas and environments, and so they don't have the privilege of being able to learn the reo. They've just got to worry about surviving, and that's really, you know, that's really sad. But it's something we need to look at how we can fix that. That's got to be part of the strategy going forward anyway.
So just as an example, you know, of this availability and privilege, tā pau te mara said with panekeretanga, and you know, I kind of felt embarrassed, but I see where he's at. He said, you know, this is the Māori School for Excellence, and he said,
unapologetic.
This is unapologetically middle class. And I was like, ouch. I don't know how I feel about that, but the truth, that is probably just speaking truth, that if you are not in a middle class situation, you're not going to be able to engage with what was required at the time. And that was travel, that was money, that was time. So I guess it's this balance of recognizing where we're at, and I think, as someone said, feeding each other, enabling each other. So we've got to be really realistic about what our barriers are, work to remove them in really multiple and joyous ways, and then we can engage in learning, but we have to use whatever we do have along the way immediately.
I think it's quite important, even if it might be a real journey, but it might be just your journey in life or whatever. It's really important to have mentors and people that you can take advice from, seek advice from, guidance from, I mean, my father would have passed away 24 years ago. And so I was a little bit along the way in the journey, and I'd already been quite connected with Whare Huia, but we became a lot more connected after that, and he sort of stepped into the breach as being the father figure. And geez, we had some good times together, and he had some fabulous advice, and we always used to play golf, and he'd say, come down to Te Manahau, hara mai ki Ngāti Whakaue, ka paka ngā tātou ko pāna Heramaia. Pāna Heramaia was the principal of Rākaumanga, and this was Whare Huia's voice. He was like the Māori Sean Connery. Manahau, hara mai ki Ngāti Whakaue. Anyway, so we go down there, and I'd be preparing, you know, and he'd just see Whare Huia sitting in the golf cart, shoulders moving, he'd be giggling away. I'd say, how te Whare Huia? How tō tinihanga? What have you done? What are you up to? Karago. And then the person would get in the office, would get on the announcer mic on the PA, and she would go, next on the tee is Whare Huia Milroy, Pāna Heremaia, and Tiko Taro. He would look at me and crack up laughing, and that's where he would be introduced, and I'd just be shaking my head going, cheapers. And you know that etiquette on the golf course, you know, when someone's playing a shot, you can't make a noise, you're not allowed to move or anything like that. That's the etiquette. And so they knew that they were going to lose, and I was going to beat them. And it was a very short putt I had, and I was about to take the putt, and next minute there's him and Bana standing in front of me going, we've got the pool, and they're doing the tūhoi haka, trying to put me off. And then one day we had a bet, and their bet was, if you lose, you have to read out that you lost to us on Te Karere. And I said, okay, fair enough, but if you guys lose to me, then I'm going to read out that you got beaten by me on the golf course. I said, okay, that's all right, because we're not going to lose. This is how confident they were. Anyway, they lost. So I went back to Te Karere that afternoon, and right at the end of Te Karere, I said, hey Tiwi, hei whakakapi aki ngā kōrero o Te Karere I tēnei rā. Katanuku te maunga tapu o maunga pohatu. Tūhoi I hinga pāna Heremaia rao ko Whare Huia I tēnei uri o Te Arawa, I te papa tākoro, hahau pōro ngā rua wāhi I te ahi ei. Nore re tiwi, koena ngā kōrero mo tēnei, tūrau Hawaii. And Whare Huia reckons, about a minute after I'd read that out on Te Karere, his phone rang, and he picked it up, and it was Tūrahira, Hare. And she goes, you two are a disgrace. What an embarrassment you are to Tūhoi. She went off and on. So I read out that they lost on the golf course anyway. But this is the sort of like, the connection that Whare Huia and I had. And I think you need those mentors. You need to find people who you can rely on, who you can be truthful with, who you can be, who you are with, and they will give you the guidance that you need. Yeah. And Whare Huia was that person definitely for a long time.
And I just want to add to that, that balance that Whare Huia had, that balance that he could bring in to be so knowledgeable and deep, and then to be playful, because he also taught us about whakawhenua, like to bring yourself back to earth. You can't stay in that place of being hard out karakia guy, of healing people, and just in the mahi that you do as well. You can't stay in that place all the time. You need something that's going to provide balance for you, whakawhenua, to bring you, literally ground you. And so in Scotty's case, I'd say when he goes to tukaha jiu-jitsu, he goes to church. That is my husband's church. That's what I've come to understand, so having that balance is really important. So that's, I guess, something that is a framework of our reo and our culture, and something that's really important, and that, you see when someone is in balance what they can achieve.
Yeah, he spoke a lot about kauhanga nuitanga, and that was the balance. And it's all in whare tapawha. It's all about the kauhanga nuitanga o te whare. Sometimes it's called te iho nuitanga. It's in our karakia, it's in tahi te kawa. The first thing you do when you walk into a whare, after you say the line, sene tiwi wea huakina te tatau o te whare kia ki te au I roto I a koe, and you go into that whare, the first thing that you say when you earn is ti ho nui e takoto, and that's about balance in the whare, balancing the whare, making sure that it's the whare is a secure place for health and well-being for our people and for us to conduct what we need to do all our affairs in that whare. And so te honuitanga o te kauhanga nuitanga was something that he demonstrated all the time. As they said, he knew how to whakawhenua, he knew how to go deep, but he knew how to bring himself out and become a normal person and, you know, function in normal ways and have fun at the same time. And so he also talked about one of his whakatauaki was mā te whakairo ka mana te whāriki, mā te whāriki ka mana te whakairo. And again, that's about balance. That's between tāne wahine. That's the whakairo giving mana to the whāriki and the whāriki giving mana to the whakairo. That balance, you know, having everything in balance, everything connecting the way it should. And so all of the kind of information is all in the reo. It's all in our culture. We just have to know how to access it. And one of the best ways to access it is through the reo.
Ka pai, kia ora tātou. Ka huri ki ngā pātai nei, right on time. Pātai anō, what is...
Right on time, because see, got to keep Stacey on the clock, otherwise, you know, could go anywhere.
Pātai, so awesome. How much to rent a room in the Morrison Morihana whare, I'd learned so much. And actually we have done that. We have... like our nephew, he came to live with us. Tino whanake tana reo. Heaps of people come to live with us, actually, but not always for the reo. And that environment, yeah. So being around people who are Māori speakers is definitely, and I guess it's a hard thing. That's one of the struggles. So if you talk about the biggest challenge in reclaiming the reo, we didn't have these naturally occurring environments, so we had to create them. So that's where we started the rōpū tākaro. All of those things were because in the absence and the lacking, we saw te pō, te kore, we saw the opportunity. So we built it. But it was, I mean, a lot of people don't have that. And I just want to acknowledge the fact that we have 2 Māori speakers, so of course that's a bit easier. So then, I mean, I think about some of my friends. One of my friends is a Māori speaker and her partner speaks another language, and she found that really hard. She thought, can we actually interact in front of the kids in a way that is, you know, right for us, keeping our relationship awesome and also transferring the reo. So they had to make slight adjustments, you know, like you don't have to all be the same. Our story doesn't have to be your story. If you see in our story, go, I don't relate to that, there's nothing like me. So cool. So what will work for you? That is probably the most important thing.
Finding out what kind of learner you are, not lawyer. What kind of learner you are. You know, the Māori Made Easy books have got a bit of pedagogy in them and a bit of theory around pedagogy in terms of learning te reo. So that Māori Made Easy, there's Māori Made Easy books, there's a couple of things in there. One is the 20-80 rule, and that is the 20% of words that you learn of the whole vocab in a language, 20% of that vocab is used in 80% of the conversations that you will have in that language. So you don't need to know the word for an algal bloom, pukohu ngaruru. You won't need to, that's not in the 20%. So you won't find that in Māori Made Easy because it's not going to be in 80% of the conversations that you're going to have, but a word like mahi will be. A word like kaha will be. A word like kai will be.
What a waiha might be, because you talk about carbohydrates.
Yeah, and it's just about being smart about the words that you're going to learn, you know, making sure that they're in that 20% because that's going to accelerate your learning. It also advocates consistency. That's why it's 30 minutes a day, because that's based on an old advertisement that used to be on TV when you used to get just 30 minutes a day, just 30 minutes a day. And actually 30 minutes a day is better than a 3-hour night class once a week. And if you transfer that to fitness, someone goes for a run, a big long run once a week, and then someone goes for short runs every day that week, they get fit, their fitness increases a lot more than the person who's going once a week. So the book's there to encourage consistency. You still want to do night classes and things like that. Rangi nui does mean real classes, you know, all that kind of thing. You want to encourage, you want to still be there to socialize the language, but if you can only make it once a week, the book's there to support the consistency so that you can carry on doing a little bit throughout the week so that you take one step forward in the class and then another step forward during the week, instead of going, or maybe 2 steps forward in the class and then another step during the week. So you don't go 2 steps in the class and then 1 step back, and then another 2 steps and then 1 step back. So it's just encouraging that consistency. So those are the kind of things, some of the learning techniques and pedagogy that are in those books. But find out what kind of learner you are. Some people love grammar. Some people are grammar geeks. They'll want grammar. Others need the contextual learning. Others just need to absorb and listen and utilize a whole range of learning techniques. One of the things I found very advantageous, which I didn't realize at the time, but I was sitting at my grandfather's tangi, and I was with a mate of mine who was in that immersion group at university, and we were having a discussion. And I said to him, yeah, man, I really want to sort of get going on learning the reo and stuff. And my cousin, Tiny Morrison, was sweeping the wharekai just next to us, and she heard me, and she said to me, come and join my kapahaka group, cuz you'll learn a lot of reo and kapahaka. And I went, you reckon? And she said, yeah, come to practice this week. And so I joined the kapahaka group, Ngāpu Mano, and went to 3 nationals with them, 3 matatini. But that was really valuable, doing kapahaka. So, there's a whole lot of different ways you can learn the reo. Identify what works best for you and then pursue those avenues. So I'd say that would be, and then, and have a plan, because most of us are time poor. So you're going to have to structure your timetable. You might even have to give up things. So if you're touch players, really love touch, but you might have to drop the touch to do the reo. You might have to give something up to create space for the reo in your timetable.
So if we look at some of your patai, we want to get through them. Your advice for newbies. I don't. Yeah, that
I was trying to answer that one.
Yeah. Kiwaha and whakatauki. I guess what are you finding that you want to learn the most? Because Scotty's done a lovely job of answering. But it sort of goes down to someone else about what's your whakaaro of about returning home to learn your reo. Because I want to learn the reo before the mihi ngare. Feel free to. Why are you teaching our son?
No,
anyway.
Well, because you asked a question. He just says at school, he's asking a question. Can you say, ka tae te ki? Here's his question. Ka tae te ki ka tō te marama?
Oh.
Pēnei te ka tō te rā, ka tae koe te ki ka tō te marama?
Can you say that the moon is set, like you say the sun is set?
So guess who I asked?
Timothy.
Tāku te rangi mā tāmua.
Oh, ka pai. Yeah, ka pai. So when you talk about what you want to learn, maybe that's the start of you talking to your whanaunga. What is that going to look like? That's the opportunities that we have now under maybe it might be under Te Mātāwai. There's just so many cool wānanga happening now, and if there's enough of you and that movement is really important, then maybe how can you do that? Or is there a way that you can, like I used to find it really, really hard to read old script, and it just, gets easier as you go on. But Scotty actually liked that quite early, so that worked for him. So it's got to be what works for you. Ko tatapau te wā, what is something... Hayley, that has surprised you about being...
Taha wairua mo.
Yeah,
Taha
that is...
wairua.
Sorry, I'll just... can you all see the question? What is something that has surprised you about being deeply embedded in the te reo that you hadn't anticipated?
Taha wairua.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Spirituality. I mean, I wouldn't have even thought about that before learning the reo. So it definitely opened up that side of who I am. Yep.
Yeah. and the normalization of that as a whānau and with our tamariki, but you'll actually find the more you talk about it, finding tohu, I did want to say that, look for the tohu, look for the signs that you're in the right place, because they will come, and they may be in the smallest forms, and they'll only make sense to you. But that is something that we have not lost, and I believe if your puku's telling you something, then you believe it.
How would you feel if more non-Māori were speaking Te Reo Māori? That's not going to happen. Not going to let that happen. Otherwise, I'm going to start. If it starts to get to that stage, I'll be booting all of the Pākehā out of class and saying, sorry, this is a Māori-only class now, because we need to catch up. Yeah, and the quality control thing, that's an interesting one, that one. I think there are instances where you need quality control, but I just think that sometimes you need to create environments for people to just go for it. And if they have heaps of hapa, so be it. but they need to be in a safe environment to be able to do that. I think it depends what the platform is and what the context is. So obviously on television, you're modeling the language to other people, and other people will start to imitate what you're saying. And if you're not saying things properly or as correct as you can get it, then you're going to model a language that's of low quality.
And that is happening.
And you try to do that at home as well. But, you know, there's area, I mean, Korero, obviously one of the awesome places to go to really start to get the excellence in Te Reo. But also, it's a very fine balance, because you also want people to feel confident to just give it a go.
Well, the thing is no one's getting out of this without looking stupid. You know, like in learning Te Reo Māori, there is that humility that has to be present, because you're going to say, I remember I wanted to say kōtiti, and I felt so neat going, oh, you know, you get taken off track, you get distracted. And I said tōtiti, which means sausage. So forevermore, sausage is our word for you're having a tōtiti, you know, you're having a kōtiti, you're going off course, for instance. But I could just quickly see.
About the tiki and the being upside down.
Hey,
oh my goodness. Yeah, so just quickly, one last one. Motaku he. Yes, like sometimes he kata kai roto I te hapa. There's a laugh in the hapa because really nice cameraman. I remember when I was on my time and I was being neaty. Remember you
still a cameraman.
Yeah, remember you falas? And so I had this hey tiki on, little plastic one. And he comes up to me and he notices, like, very careful, and he goes, oh, Stacey, your tiki's run the wrong way. Oh my gosh. And so yeah, Matai will still say something, hey, whakatike here, don't take it. So you gotta laugh, and you are laughing. He oranga kai roto I te kata, tēnā tātou katoa.
Yeah, sorry. That one about where Maui and Hinanui Te Pō and all that, I mean, that's something that I've been doing for a little while now, actually, because it's really interesting what's all the kurahuna that are in our traditional narratives. And it's part of actually the next Origins. We've just been to Hawaii, Marquesas, Rapa Nui, Chile, Hawaii. And Peru. Yeah, I said Hawaii. And some of the connections that they talked about, this whakapapa that we have, I mean, this is the system. This is the system that our ancestors created, is the whakapapa. The whakapapa is the system that holds all of what we are and all of what we know. It's all sitting in our whakapapa, and they have planted all of the knowledge that we need and all of that stuff about peeling layers back and finding all the kurahuna. It's all planted in our whakapapa. And you got kōrero whakapapa. Kōrero whakapapa is when you're actually going through ancestral lines, but then you got whakapapa kōrero, which is all the traditional narratives. And in those narratives, and even if you can connect those two up, you find everything that you need in there, but you just got to know how to access it. It's the same thing as what I said before. It's about accessing it, interpreting it, and then peeling those layers back and finding that gold. What did Lewin call them?
Hidden gems.
The hidden gems. Speaking of hidden gems, kawati, hoki kia koe.
He's not hidden.
Well, unhidden gem. Just a gem. There you go.
Mā mihi ana kia kōrua kamutu. Hei, paku whakamutunga pēr, hei āpiti atu ki te rā pātai around quality control. There's he nui te hunga I tēnei whare o tātou, I tēnei wānei kei te rāngai hauora. Nā reira, just thinking about when people are in different domains, where, not saying health is, but in different domains and different spaces where Māori doesn't currently exist, and that whole quality control, and then wanting to, we all in different spaces wanting to expand te reo. Are there particular processes or where would people go to create and or see if there's a process to create that, and two, yeah, what are your thoughts around the creation of Māori and the expansion of Māori in different spaces, and he like, you know, we've got AI here, we've got, you know, all these different, especially in te ao hangaro,
Yeah, I heard Hemi Kelly saying this the other day, that we need to lean into AI, because otherwise, you know, you can't say to Siri and Māori to turn things on. And so that's going to be it's quite different for us, because we have here on our language, you know, and responsibilities and stuff. So there is definitely a lot of wānanga that needs to be had. But in terms of everyday practice and how we bring things into the space. There's a lot of consultants now. So you're going to find the right fit for you.
Go to a good consultant.
Yeah, you're gonna see these tohu to go, this works. They're from here, they have experience in this area. You know, it's like how we match people up for TV shows. I don't get asked to do the hunting ones because I know nothing about that. But you know, like what does it, how do you kind of relate to that person? What can they bring? What is something about them that as a consultant that is a good fit with you? And I reckon if I get asked 10 times to do something, 8 of those times I tell them who they should be talking to. You know, so it's about all of us working to our strengths because there's just a lot to be done there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of consultants out there. It's just, you know, making sure you do a bit of due diligence, get a good consultant who is ratified and recognized and acknowledged as being a good consultant, and then and appropriate, and they have the knowledge that you require for whatever space you're going into. Because we've done a heap, we've been into spaces that are very Pākehā and gone in there and trying to change things. You know, we work in Pākehā institutions and we're changing things. It's gradual, it's 3-generation process. We're not trying to do it overnight. And sometimes you have to use the velvet glove, not the iron fist. And you have to media them through. But however it happens, keep the mind on the goal of 3 generations. Equity, tino rangatiratanga, mana motuhake in 3 generations. That's sort of what my objective is. That's how far I'm looking ahead when I'm doing a whole lot of stuff now. I was going to say a whole lot of the stuff I'm doing now. Yeah, I think it's...
And I'd love to have a copy of this, please, this picture.
You're going to make me look like Jason Momoa, bro. My shoulders aren't broad enough. Could you give me some trips? Can you give me some trips, bro, and a bit of delts?
Well, thank you so much, Korua, for everything that you've laid out. Hei hakari mā tātou, hei timo, mo te hungai whaine I te reo rangatira, I te reo, I te arero tupuna. There you go.
Yours, brother. Oh, he's rubbing it out. Kia ora koutou, mihi nui ana kia koutou. Thank you all very, very much for being patient and listening to us. And yes, we can talk. That's what we're paid to do. That's why we're on media platforms. But hopefully there was something in there. Hopefully there was a kurahuna in there somewhere that might be of value to somebody out in the world there who's listening in at the moment. But we'd just like to say thank you very much. It's been a privilege to be part of the Hui Tahu for Toi Tangata this year. So thank you very much. Tā reo tēnā koe I te tono. Kauati tēnā koe I tō whakahaere te kaupapa. O tira Jason, kai tautoko a hangarau, koutou katoa. Tēnā koutou. Ku whakamutunga au?
Mauri ora ki tō tātou reo.
Kia ora tātou.
Ngai hopu mana o Te Reo Māori o te Arawa, Ngāti Whakaue, Ngāi Tahu, mana host Stacey Morrison, tēnā rawa tura.